I know it was mentioned that my brother would be up here with me tonight, but we decided to settle it kind of a different way. We didn't want to share the microphone, so we had a wrestling match, and I ended up beating him, so that's why I'm here to say that. Him and his wife just had their first little baby girl, so they stayed home in Athens, and they're probably changing diapers right now. First, I want to congratulate all the inductees, and a few special congratulations. First, Rush. I grew up watching Rush, watching him compete, and he definitely meant a lot to the Olmsted Falls Wrestling program, so congratulations, Rush. The next two, my dad's colleagues, Pat Donahue and Jim Ryan. I was in the school. I had Coach Donahue as a teacher, and I think if you look back at the history of Olmsted Falls athletics, a lot of it has happened because of those three guys, and that's why Olmsted Falls was a powerhouse for such a long time, so congratulations. First, I want to start out kind of explaining my dad's background. Some of you may know this, but he started out as a basketball player. He says he was the best basketball player on his team. In 7th grade, he said he used to score like 30 points every game. I don't know if it's a wives' tale or not, but he said it happened. He ended up quitting basketball. He said people called him a ball hog. His parents were tired of hearing people complain in the stands. So he quit basketball and he decided to wrestle. He didn't want to hear what anybody had to say about him, so he started wrestling. He wrestled in high school. He was a state qualifier. Wanted to continue wrestling in college. He wanted to go to Ashland University. Ashland University said, and I guess a poor way to say this, but he wasn't smart enough, right? So he goes to a junior college in Michigan, works his butt off for 2 years, has a good career up there. He reapplies to Ashland University, gets accepted with an academic and athletic scholarship. So he goes to Ashland, becomes a national qualifier, graduates from Ashland, goes to Miami of Ohio, the same kid that wasn't smart enough to go to college out of high school, goes to Miami to get his master's degree, and is a grad assistant wrestling coach at Miami. After Miami, he went to Medina Buckeye, was an assistant wrestling coach, headed to Waynedale High School, where he met my mom. He was a head coach there. He did great things for that program, and Waynedale is still a powerhouse in the state of Ohio. After Waynedale, he heads to Olmsted Falls, and kind of the rest is history. At Olmsted Falls, he began in 1986. He was the head coach for 27 years. He had a dual meet record of 335 wins, 58 losses, and 3 ties. I didn't know that was possible in wrestling, but I guess it was. He had 7 state champions. He had 12 top 10 finishes in the state. He had 13 SWC championships. He was a 3-time Greater Cleveland Coach of the Year. He was the Plain Dealer Coach of the Year, and a Division II High School Wrestling Coach of the Year. He retires from Olmsted Falls, decides to hang up the wrestling shoes, teaches for a few more years, is inducted to the Ohio Wrestling Hall of Fame, the Waynedale Wrestling Hall of Fame, the Olmsted Falls Wrestling Hall of Fame, and now the Olmsted Falls Athletic Hall of Fame. But when I look back at those things, those aren't the most important things that I think my dad did. When I look at Olmsted Falls Wrestling, I think he did 2 things. He created a family atmosphere, and he created a winning tradition. When I look back at the family atmosphere, I think about how I grew up. I was in the wrestling room all the time. Some of the guys will probably laugh at this next part, but I was like their little brother. Guys like Chris Oden, Bryce Burkhart, and I used to do this thing called the poopy dump. So I'd start back and I'd run up and just cannonball right on their stomachs when they were laying on the ground. But they put up with me, and that's one of the reasons why I love this program so much. Another thing, when I was a little kid in elementary school, my mom would pick me up from school. She'd say, "All right, we're going home." And I'd say, "No way, I'm going to practice." So she'd take me to practice. I'd knock on the back door. Somebody would let me in. Probably had grass-stained blue jeans and a stretched-out white t-shirt, and I was ready to go for practice. First thing I'd ask my dad every practice, say, what are we doing for conditioning? 5-minute run, or are we running sprints? I always hoped it was a 5-minute run because I could do it with the guys. The same guys that I'd run with. Rush Williams was one of them. Tommy Carver, John Stouffer, Kyle Stouffer, guys like the Hodermarskis, the Pass. All great names in Olmsted Falls wrestling history. Fast forward 10 years, I'm in high school, getting ready for our junior and senior seasons. And those same guys that I was running with when I was in elementary school were coming back to work out with us in our high school wrestling room. To me, those guys coming back shows that it really is a family and they cared about the success of the future of that program. And that's such a special thing about Olmsted Falls Wrestling. Next is the winning tradition. A lot of people, when they think of what happens during a career, they think about what happens during the season. But Olmsted Falls Wrestling would not have had the success it did if it weren't for my dad turning it into a year-round commitment. He did multiple things to give his wrestlers better opportunities to succeed. He took his wrestlers to camps, just to name a few. They went to Iowa State, Penn State, Northwestern, Illinois, the Naval Academy, Nebraska, the Disney Duels in Orlando, Michigan, Michigan State, and North Carolina, just to name a few. He also created a Olmsted Falls wrestling tournaments for his wrestlers to wrestle in the off-season. Along with his wrestlers being able to do that, it was a great moneymaker for the Olmsted Falls Athletic Boosters Association. He also held camps and clinics for his athletes to take part in. Some of the biggest names in wrestling. Has anybody heard of Cael Sanderson? Anybody know the name? All right. Well, Cael Sanderson was a four-time national champion, an Olympic champion, never lost in college. And my dad brought him into Olmsted Falls High School, and he ran 2 different clinics 2 separate times. To kind of let you know what that means, if you're a basketball fan, it'd be like having LeBron James come to Olmsted Falls basketball and doing a camp. It was a big deal. In these camps, he had 5 Olympic gold medalists, 14 national champions, and 14 Olympians. He also created an off-season wrestling team called Team Subway. It was sponsored by the Subway on Columbia Road. They travel around in the off-season and wrestle different tournaments. Another opportunity for his athletes to succeed. Currently, he's on the other side of the fence now. He wears the zebra stripe, so he's a referee. And I think it's probably a good thing because he can get yelled at just as much as he yelled at the poor guys. He also volunteers at Baldwin Wallace. He's volunteered there the past few years, and he loves it. He's able to be around the sport of wrestling. He doesn't have to worry about all the organizational stuff. He can just help kids with the sport that he truly loves. Over the last few years, we haven't spent much time in the wrestling room together as we used to, and that's kind of turned to golf. And after spending so much time with my dad on the golf course, I'm shocked that he did not get thrown out of more matches because his temper is There's one more person I'd like to thank, and that's my mom. My mom put up with my dad for many, many years as a coach's wife, and he would not have had the success if it wasn't for her. There's one last thing. My dad wasn't much of a motivational speaker, but when he gave one, I think everybody kind of listened because it's kind of a rarity. And there's one that my brother and I would always tease him about. He probably knows where I'm going to go with this. But he'd always compare an athletic performance to a fire. And he said, you can't start a fire without a spark. You kind of think about it. Makes sense, right? Well, I think my dad was the spark for the Olmsted Falls wrestling family. It's my honor to present you my father, Chaz McGrain.
Good job, Chaz.
Thank you very much. I'm sad that my son